You're watching TVC Breakfast. Let's get to our discussion now. The impact of climate change cannot be overemphasized as we now live with its devastating effects. World leaders are currently in Cairo, the capital of Egypt, for the climate change conference, where issues like climate finance, oil exploration, carbon reduction strategies are being discussed, and amongst other things. Joining us via Zoom is an environmental rights activist, Desmond Majekodunmi. He is going to help us make sense of what the agenda of Africa will be and what the way forward will look like in the coming days from COP27. It's nice to have you join us, Desmond. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here with you.
Great. Now, from all the COPs, all the meetings that have been held, one would say maybe if we have to x-ray the impact from all of the COPs that have been held over the years, one may not be feeling the impact as much as the effect of climate change. What are you seeing from the impact of all of the things, all of the meetings that have been held over the years so far? Let me start from there.
Yes, this COP, that's Conference of the Parties for Climate Change, it was something that the United Nations decided they needed to start to do over 30 years ago when they started getting the reports from the meteorological organizations that we are on the brink of pushing our climate into a very dangerous place. So they had this Conference of the Parties and a lot of talk. Yes, we have to do the right thing. These greenhouse gases causing too much poison, blah, blah, blah. And it continued and continued until around 10 years ago, the Global Meteorological Organization, and by that time, the International Panel for Climate Change in the United Nations, started blowing the alarm very, very loudly and said, look, the science is real. We're pushing this environment to a very dangerous place. Because if you push it too far, then you now get into a situation where you can't stop the process. And that's when they had the 2015 Paris conference, where everybody decided, okay, we're going to cut down on these greenhouse gases. Even Nigeria went there. Our president signed a accord, said we're going to cut down. All the countries of the world said they're going to cut down. But guess what? 5 years later, the greenhouse gas emissions have never been so high. And so at this last COP conference, if you hear what the Secretary General of the United Nations had to say, I'll just share it with you very briefly. He said, we are in the fight of our lives and we are losing the battle, that we are on a highway to climate hell and our foot is still on the accelerator. Hey, and you know who's been affected the most? It's we in Africa. So thank God the COP is actually taking place in Africa this time.
Well, Majekodunmi, it's very good for you to set the context for this. And the report has been that the countries are now saying that if you want us in the developing countries to follow all the prescriptions of a new climate attitude, you have to help us because, you know, you guys did all the damage. You have been doing the damage for centuries. You have become very rich. We are poor. And you want us to follow your own system. You don't want us to do coal. You don't want us to do all of that. But you have already done the same thing and become rich. So how are we going to go forward in this context?
Yes, very, very good question. Don't mind them. They're trying to treat us like a poor church rat. But
exactly, that's what I was coming to. The church rat and the poisoned Holy Communion.
We no agree. We no agree. We are the great Africa, the giant of Africa, and we need to be very, very careful now. Because let's face it, all the resources, major amount of the resources that the modern world needs, they are right here in our soil, even right here in Nigeria. Yes. Silicon, you know, they have Silicon Valley in America. Yes. It's silicon. A lot of the silicon comes from here.
Yes.
Not to mention the bauxites that they use for the batteries. Not to mention so many things. So many things. We are the great giants, and we have to come together, stand together. And luckily, this Secretary General of UN, he seems to have a very good heart, because he is the one who is pushing and saying, no, no, no. You are the ones who caused this problem of the global warming. How much of global warming is Africa causing? For God's sake, bring the money out. Let these people be able to at least adapt to the problem, and then to be able to mitigate, that is to transit. So there's hope this time if we can just bury our differences and come together as brothers and sisters of the great continent, Africa. We have a very good chance. There's billions of dollars now being made available for this type of thing, because they realize that if the African countries, as they're developing more and more, they're going to be burning more and more, and this thing is going to have a very negative effect. So we better do what we can to appease them, to persuade them to be able to make the transition to cleaner energy systems. And there's still a little bit of gap, especially with the gas, if we use the gas very, very judiciously and carefully, because gas gives a lot of greenhouse, methane is a very, very potent greenhouse gas. But if we use it very judiciously and know that we're only going to be using it for a short period of time, we can jumpstart, we can leapfrog, just like we did in with the telecom sector now, dialing, and then we just leaped right into all this G4, G5 stuff. So there's good hope at this conference, but we have to talk together with one voice as Africans. And I believe Nigeria is going to do just that. She's going to lead the way. I'm very, very confident we'll get something very good out of it, because it's a serious matter. Yeah. On the highway to climate hell, and we're still pressing accelerator. I don't agree. Oh, and one other thing, by the way, a lot of the solution is here on our soil. We are the tropical rainforest country. And that's one of the best ways of getting rid of the carbon dioxide. So it's hopeful. We have to speak as one voice, one African voice.
I'm sure you made reference to the church rat thing when Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC said that they have to pay us not to use our resources and so on. Do you think that we are able to really put ourselves in a good stance to really negotiate how much they can pay us in order for us to do what they want us to do in terms of not tapping on our own resources that could, jeopardize this issue of climate justice?
So we can do it. Again, it's because we have the solution, major part of the solution to the problem, which is nature's way. I mean, let's face it, this creation is a miracle. It's a perfect system that was given to us by a miraculous God, the God who was in the beginning, before the beginning began, the great God. And he gave us this miracle of creation. Just the fact that, every day when I'm breathing out carbon dioxide, and I know that all the green leaves of the trees and the grass is taking that carbon dioxide, and then giving me back the oxygen. Wow, and we have the forest, also the mangrove. Our coastal mangrove area is the swamp area is very, very good for sucking out this carbon dioxide. It's just that we don't, look after it. We regard it, it's just poto, but it's a very valuable poto. So we have a good bargaining card. And definitely, they have to bring the money out to compensate us for foregoing the quick starts, because, let's face it, our economy is very, very much fossil fuel based. But there has to be a transition, because this thing is more than serious. It is the primary problem of humanity, as if we didn't have enough problems, but this is the one. And the very, very bright lining on this extremely dark cloud, though, because they're telling us, the scientists are telling us very clearly that we have between 8 to 12 years to reverse this trend. And already we haven't reversed it at all. We haven't gone down enough of the pollution. After that, you now get what they call these unstoppable tipping points. Areas that used to suck the carbon dioxide will now be giving it off, or they'll be giving off the methane. And once it reaches that stage, you can't stop it. So we have a great bargaining card that, hey, we can provide the resources to suck out that carbon dioxide. But bring your money, or don't put any poison into the communion. We want a good, clean communion for ourselves. Bring the money out, and we can do it for you.
All right. Now, we often talk about the issue of the solution of our problems is within the continent. And we say that in economics, we say that in politics, we say that in the environment, we say that in every sphere of life. Yet we don't seem to be having that conversation amongst the leaders within the African continent. And when we get to the table, there is the politics of the Anglophone, there is the politics of the Francophone, there is the politics of all of those. But what kind of conversation should we be having across board that would be most effective, especially for this climate change related issues that we have?
Thank you. That's a very relevant question. The conversation that we need to have is, hey, we're all in the same house, and our house is catching fire. And if you sort of bring it down to a more sort of practical example, you're locked up in a big chamber, a big house, and there's no exit, okay? And you're now arguing that, okay, well, you are this, you are that tribe, you are this country, and the house is on fire. Will you continue arguing and disputing amongst yourselves, looking to position yourself? Oh, well, I have to be bigger and better than you. No. And guess what? This is our global house. And it is actually, it's actually just a small little marble in the sky. It's a tiny blue marble in the cosmos. When you look at the earth from outer space, it humbles you. And it's the only one that can support life out of all the millions and millions. So our only home, which the Creator has given us and has told us to care for it, is there in all the scriptures. In the Holy Bible, it's there. In the Holy Quran, it's there. We are caretakers of the creation, which is our life support system. So now is the time. And that's the exciting part of it, because we have to bury our differences. Otherwise, we'll start burying ourselves. The catastrophe that will come, it's like nature is fighting back. There's there's the spiritual injunction. Whatsoever you sow, you shall surely reap. God is not mocked, And nature, we're sowing too much negativity into her. So she's fighting back and saying, you human beings, wake up, evolve, have a far more caring heart. If you really do love your God, the creator of the earth, then you will follow his injunction and care for the earth as he told you to do in his creation. After all, it's your children's life support system as well. So I am hopeful that we as Africans, we will bury our differences. And hey, guess what? When you check the DNA, I was shocked when a specialist told me. He said the genetic difference between tribes is less than 1%. So we're 99%, in fact, 99 point something percent the same. So we have to come together as brothers and speak with one voice. And once we do that, the world will listen, the world will respond. After all, we are the Africa. This is where life was born. This is where life started. And we have a great opportunity to ensure that life continues on this, our dear planet.
Can you address this paradox? In Nigeria, for instance, we have a lot of floods. And at the same time, we are complaining that the Chad Basin has dried up. What is causing this paradox? In the US, for instance, they are complaining about rivers that are drying up, there are ponds that are drying up, and yet we are having floods. Why these two? Does it not contradict itself?
Yes, in a way, on the surface, it looks quite contradictory. However, in reality, we've always had, dry periods, dry areas, and we've always had wet periods with floods and so on, okay? Now, what is actually happening is that the climate change, it's exacerbating these, what used to be pretty natural occurrences. So the dry periods, the dry areas are gonna be even drier. And the rain, it's not even, that the amount of rain that will fall during the whole year will be much more than what has normally fallen. But what is happening is that you're getting a lot more rain falling in a very, very short time in those areas where the rain used to fall on a more spread out basis. So that will now cause the massive floods. But also, it's not just the climate change. And this is where we as Africans, we as Nigerians, we need to wake up to that reality that we've been exploiting nature far too much. Deforestation, the destruction of our forests and the mangroves is also one of the major contributors to this problem, especially around the Lake Chad area, because that was a very vegetated zone. And the trees, they're not just giving us our oxygen. The trees are also helping to absorb moisture and then transmit it again into the atmosphere as rain. So they're perpetuating a regular cycle. And all that Lake Chad area had a lot of trees and vegetation, but we started cutting them down, and shamefully, we were using it for firewood in our dear country that could easily have supplied the necessary fuels for people to make their fires. So again, it's back to us caring for creation, looking after nature, having good respect for nature, learning something from our forefathers and foremothers, because they used to care for nature. In fact, to protect forests, they will not say, okay, this is taboo, don't cut that forest.
How are you? Yeah.
All right. Now, as it is, one would say that with the right information and enlightenment, the roles of government is there, different from the roles of organizations and NGOs, different from the roles of individuals at the very micro levels and so on. But it seems in all of these roles, no one seems to be taking responsibility. Government committed, but government doesn't seem to be working. Or maybe the NGOs are the ones creating awareness, but the individuals may not even have the right enlightenment to begin to act in the way they're supposed to act. How do we begin to get it right in bringing all of these people together and then taking that step towards protecting our environment?
Get it right, absolutely. Well, this wonderful media organization is playing a very, very important role just by creating the awareness and bringing it out. I've noticed that some of the international media organizations are also dedicating a lot of airtime to this. There needs to be massive publicity. It is an emergency. And you see, the thing is, we haven't reached yet that point where it now becomes irreversible and totally catastrophic. I mean, if you check out some of the facts, some of the data, we're talking of hundreds and hundreds of millions of people being displaced. Look what happened in the floods we just had. Several million people, boom, displaced like that. Those floods could become 10 times worse. And we need to get this message across that it's not too late now, but we need to make it our priority. And definitely now, with the election period, anybody who wants to come into a position of leading the people has to be able to let them know that they are ready to do the right thing when it comes to caring for the creation, for the environment. It's our life support system. And I am hoping and praying that the democratic system will be able to kick in effectively enough for the leaders to appreciate, well, we are here to serve. We're here to serve the people. And it's a massive, massive responsibility. Again, we refer back to scripture, because what you sow into the people's lives, if it's good, you're going to be blessed. If it's bad, so it's a matter of just, following our scriptural injunction a lot better. The scriptures give us the template of how a leader needs to behave. and he needs to ensure that he's protecting the people's life support systems, that is looking after the environment, which is what we need to have a good and a healthy life. If you don't have a healthy planet, you cannot have healthy people. And this is why we're very encouraged at what's going on now at the COP, because our leaders have to speak the right voice, have to speak the right thing to the people there and let them know that we are standing together and we are demanding that we have the necessary resources to do what needs to be done to transit away from what the Secretary General said, on a highway to climate hell. Me, I know one good day. I'm gonna come out for that Bolakaja. I'm gonna tell the driver, jam the brake.
Right. What is the role of literacy and enlightenment in this? Because you're talking about people should look at the Quran and the scriptures. Or do we know that even those people who have been denying the issue of climate change tend to be even the evangelicals around the world, especially in the Western countries, saying that, no, let us not, interfere with nature.
So
let
the
nature,
role of
let us do what we are supposed to do. Yes.
What is the role of the...
Of literacy. Literacy and enlightenment.
Yes. Essential. Absolutely essential. And luckily, it can be fast-tracked now. You know, it was done way back at the beginning of our republic, our Nigeria. There were great sages like Chief Obafemi Awolowo. You know, may he rest in peace. He fast-tracked it at that time. And it astounded the colonialists because when some of our people now went over to their own universities and started getting some of the highest marks in some of the very complicated subjects, it put a lot of myths to rest. So literacy is absolutely essential. Education is, and luckily we can fast track it with the technology now. Yes. It's so much easier now. You can have all these wonderful devices that you'll be putting into the schools. Even if you don't have a school, you can sit under the tree in one of those areas and have the devices, and you can actually be teaching the people. It's so important. And our hope and our prayer is that whoever comes in to lead this nation will learn from the lessons of the great sage who was able to educate so many of the population with his dogged activities, with his determination that our people will be literate, our people will be educated, because it's so essential. Otherwise, you can't blame them. You know, ignorance is a terrible cloud. And if you're dealing with having to penetrate through ignorance that has been perpetrated in the minds of people because they haven't been educated, because they're not literate, it becomes a bit of a challenge. But we will break this challenge. We are Nigeria. We are the giant of Africa. And the giants have been sleeping. Now it's time for him to get up and to roar and to let the world know that, yes, Niger has arrived. Niger is here. We're going to do it. We have all that we need under our soil, and we have a whole lot between our ears as well. We shall show to the world that we can do it.
All right.
Definitely, good education is important.
Okay. Before we let you go, everyone agrees that because of the impact of climate change on the African continent, because we are always on the receiving end, it's quite significant to host the COP27 in Africa. But what do you expect that the hosting of this conference on the African continent will change? What are you looking that this COP27 is going to impact or change or make different?
Well, one of the things that is already impacting on the consciousness of the Western world is the amazing development that Africa has had. Because remember, they're there in Egypt now, amongst the pyramids, which are astounding works of architecture and design. Those pyramids, when you look at their design, the way they are aligned in terms of the space and in terms of alignment with the true north and all this thing, it is amazing, let alone the whatever it is, that till today they are baffled about how those giant stones were moved and put in such good precision. So already the world is seeing that this Africa that you are calling dark continent in a negative way is actually Africa, the great continent. And that is going to have a lot of impact, especially on the young people, because everybody's tuning in now, catching a few snaps here and there, sending it out, and they're saying, wow, Africa is great, you know? So the next thing is we'll now let them look at what we have in Nigeria. Nigeria is also great. If it's nature, if it's tourism that you want, we got it all here as well. So I think it's going to help to change a lot of those old conceptions that people had about us. And it'll make them again realize that they need to work with Africa. If you can't bring Africa on board with this thing, you won't be able to take your foot off that accelerator. And we're insisting that we don't want to be speed longing down that highway to hell. It's not my portion, it's not your portion.
All right. All right, it's a good place to leave it now. Thank you so much, Desmond Majekodunmi, for all the insight into what could happen and what we need to do to turn around from going to the environmental hell. We hope we don't get there at all. And the right time to act is now. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Great.